Quentin Tarantino once said Alfred Hitchcock was handcuffed by the strict censorship of Hollywood's Hays Code. The system was built to sanitize anything deemed too risque, forcing Hitchcock to imply rather than show, to suggest rather than state. Many of the stylistic techniques he's now celebrated for were really acts of rebellion, clever ways to outsmart the censors. But in 1960, with Psycho, he finally tore those handcuffs apart. What might seem tame by today's standards was, at the time, a cultural earthquake, one that shattered Hollywood's moral code and changed cinema forever. So how did he do it? To find out, let's take a look at how Hitchcock's Psycho and one unforgettable shower scene killed the Hollywood censorship code. For much of Hollywood's golden age, the film industry operated under the production code, more commonly known as the Hays Code, named after the chairman of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, Will H. Hays. A former Republican politician, Hays acted as a moral overseer of Hollywood's artistic output, with the production code laying down a series of strict rules designed to uphold morality on screen. The code prohibited nudity, profanity, excessive violence, and anything that might offend or disturb the American audience. Criminals could never be sympathetic, characters couldn't kiss longer than 3 seconds, and any acts of violence had to be implied and never shown on screen. Even something as mundane as a toilet flushing or a married couple sharing a bed was forbidden. The code effectively forced filmmakers to cloak mature content in suggestion and innuendo. Many directors learned how to skirt around the rules just enough to convey to the audience what they wanted to show, while still obeying the rules. But for an auteur like Hitchcock, who thrived on pushing boundaries, these restrictions were a creative cage. Hitchcock was sly and playful with his interpretation of the rules, often using the power of innuendo and suggestion to smuggle taboo content past the code. A prime example is the 1941 film Suspicion, which follows a newly married woman who begins to fear that her husband is plotting to kill her for her life insurance. Hitchcock originally wanted the ending to confirm her suspicions, but the Hays Code forbade him from showing a beloved star like Cary Grant as a murderer. Forced to comply, Hitchcock rewrote the scene so Grant insists it was all a misunderstanding, but he ends the film with Grant creepily putting his arm around her, leaving audiences with the chilling sense that he might kill her once they get home. He pushed things even further with his 1946 film Notorious. To skirt around the 3-second kiss rule, Hitchcock directed Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman to break their kiss every few seconds to exchange small bits of dialogue. The result was a 2.5-minute sequence that was actually more erotic than a single long kiss. It was a direct mockery of the code's arbitrary timing rule. These tricks allowed Hitchcock to make provocative films under the radar, but he was still incredibly frustrated by the constraints. By the late 1950s, with cultural attitudes loosening and the rise of television beginning to challenge cinema, Hitchcock saw an opportunity to push the Hays Code further than ever before. By 1959, Hitchcock was a household name, thanks to both his successful film career with hits like Vertigo and North by Northwest, but also his popular television program Alfred Hitchcock Presents. When he came across the novel Psycho, inspired by the real-life murderer Ed Gein, Hitchcock recognized its shocking potential as a movie. But when he pitched the idea to Paramount, the studio balked. The subject matter, murder, mental illness, and sexual perversion, would be too controversial for modern audiences. Determined, Hitchcock offered to finance the film himself, shooting it cheaply in black and white, while using the crew from his TV show. By downsizing the budget, he gained the freedom to take risks that the studio would never have allowed on a large production. When it came to shooting Psycho's most famous scene, Marion Crane's murder in the shower, Hitchcock spent an entire week filming the sequence. He shot from dozens of angles to create a fragmented, impressionistic assault. The audience sees flashes of nudity, glimpses of a knife, and blood spurling down a drain, but never any actual stabbing. The violence is never fully shown visually, yet the editing tricks the mind into seeing a brutal stabbing. Hitchcock originally wanted the scene to have no music, thinking that the lack of a score would make it feel more visceral. But his composer, Bernard Herrmann, went ahead and wrote music for it anyway, scoring it with shrieking violins, slashing cellos, and shrill violas. When Hitchcock complained to Herrmann that the scene wasn't working without music, Herrmann played him what he wrote. The result became one of the most iconic pieces of film music ever written, the sound itself mimicking the sound of slashing, screaming, and violence. However, when Hitchcock said, "Let's use it," Herrmann jokingly reminded him, "But you said no music," to which Hitchcock replied, "Improper suggestion, my boy." improper suggestion. The sequence enraged the censors. It appeared to break multiple code rules at once. Not only was the stabbing montage itself depicting an unprecedented level of brutality, Janet Leigh's exposed flesh was more revealing than anything Hollywood had ever shown. And to top it all off, Marion is also seen flushing paper down a bathroom toilet, marking the first time a flushing toilet appeared on screen in American cinema. Several of the censors in charge of enforcing the production code claimed they could see one of Janet Leigh's breasts during the shower sequence, whereas others disagreed, insisting that it was just suggestive editing. Hitchcock, amused rather than genuinely concerned, told the censors he would re-edit the scene and resubmit it. Though when he did, he didn't alter a single frame. The result was comical. The censors who had sworn they saw nudity now didn't, and those who hadn't suddenly did. The inconsistency exposed just how subjective and arbitrary the censors' rules really were. Ultimately, the censors approved the sequence after Hitchcock agreed to remove one brief shot that revealed the buttocks of Janet Leigh's body double, but the moral outrage didn't stop there. The board also took issue with the film's racy opening scene, where Marion Crane lounges on the bed in her bra after implied sex with her lover Sam Loomis. The image of an unmarried couple having shared a bed together was a flagrant violation of the code's restrictions on illicit sex. Hitchcock promised to reshoot the scene, on the condition that members of the censorship board attend the set to supervise. After none of them showed up for the scheduled reshoot, he kept the scene exactly as it was. Rather than confronting censorship head-on, Hitchcock used the censors' own inconsistency and discomfort against them. Psycho didn't just break the rules, it made the rule keepers look foolish. By the time the film was approved, Hitchcock had managed to retain nearly everything he wanted, proving that the code's power could be bent and eventually broken. Psycho's impact on cinema didn't end with its assault on Hollywood censorship. It also transformed how films were marketed. At the time, it was common for cinema audiences to walk into the theater at any point during the film, watch the rest of it, and then stick around to watch it again to catch what they missed. However, Hitchcock insisted to theaters that no one would be admitted after the screening had begun. Initially, theaters were worried that turning away paying customers would hurt profits, but after the first day, the gamble paid off spectacularly, with long queues forming outside cinemas. Hitchcock handled nearly all of the film's promotion himself, refusing to let stars Janet Leigh and Anthony Perkins do the usual television, radio, or print interviews, fearing they might spoil the film's shocking twists. After all, Leigh's character, the apparent star of the movie, dies in the first portion of the film, something no major Hollywood production had ever dared to do before. The original trailer featured Hitchcock giving the viewer a guided tour of the set of the Bates Motel, teasing plot details before abruptly stopping himself as he mentioned that he didn't want to reveal too much. In an effort to keep the film's twist a surprise and create even more mystery, he sent his team out to buy as many copies of the book as they could find in stores across the country. He wanted to make sure no one could read ahead and spoil the film's twists, like the truth about Norman Bates' mother. Even critics were denied advanced screenings and forced to see the film with the public, which only amplified the mystery and tension surrounding its release. The message was clear. Psycho wasn't just a film, it was an event that you had to experience firsthand. Upon release, word spread rapidly, and Psycho became a full-blown cultural event. 2 months after its premiere, it achieved another first, screening simultaneously on Broadway and in neighboring theaters, something no film had done before. Between the secrecy and the strict admission policy, Psycho turned moviegoing into an event governed by suspense and rules. Hitchcock didn't just reinvent horror, he reinvented how audiences watched movies. Psycho became a box office phenomenon. Made for under $1 million, it grossed over 50 worldwide. Some critics initially dismissed it as vulgar sensationalism, but audiences couldn't get enough. Hitchcock's clever marketing techniques had turned the film into a cultural flashpoint. The success of Psycho made one thing clear. Audiences were hungry for transgressive adult content. The film had gone directly at the code's prohibitions, and yet triumphed commercially. This undercut the code's authority. If Psycho could thrive without obeying the rules, why should studios continue to listen to the censors? In the years following Psycho, more filmmakers pushed boundaries. Films like Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate openly flaunted violence and sexuality, culminating in Midnight Cowboy, which was rated X, winning Best Picture by the end of the decade. The cultural revolution of the 60s made the code seem laughably outdated. By 1968, the production code was officially abandoned, replaced by the MPAA rating system that remains today. Tarantino was right that Hitchcock was handcuffed by the times, but in Psycho, he managed to break free of those handcuffs. By daring to show what the code forbade, sex, violence, nudity, and even a flushing toilet, Hitchcock not only terrified audiences, but also liberated Hollywood. The shower scene remains iconic today, not simply for its chills, but for what it represents. The end of Hollywood censoring creative expression. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Hollywood's untold stories and unmade movies.